place in my life. Did I lose y'all?
No.
Something happened in my end.
We started the recording. I forgot to start it right at 12.
Okay, but you good. All right, so I've been using choice theory and reality therapy since a long time. I mean, a long time. But when I came to Glasser, I learned more about how to use it well. So here's my thing. My outcome's this. I need you to have one takeaway, one correction, one improvement, and one celebration. If you think about it, a lot of times we come, but what is the takeaway? One takeaway you can have. What's one correction you can make, especially navigating mental health with Black men and men of color? What's one improvement we all can make to improve the landscape of Black men and men of color? And then what is one celebration that we can have? Because I think that we can learn to celebrate our accomplishments in learning how to use it and use this well. So breaking the chains. This is so important to me. How do we break these chains? How do we spend quality time using reality therapy to break chains? So our agenda is we're going to talk about historical. Everybody,
need everybody to mute, please.
So historical, cultures, systemic challenges faced by Black men and men of color. So I'll say this for a lot of things. Dealing with historical and cultural systems that a lot of times Black men are not sitting at the counter, sitting at the table and saying, how do we change this system so that we can consistently address the mental health challenges that we are having? And then what kind of choices we make? Because some people found out how frustrating it can be that they create systems without our voice, without being part of it, without even having any say-so in our own well-being. So the second thing is the psychological impact of racism, discrimination, generational trauma, because I asked a question today about the trauma, and sometimes we forget that adverse childhood experiences, some of the trauma that Black men have experienced have never been addressed. Then we introduce choice theory and reality therapy. I use ACT and Ms. Kim Over's piece, Mental Freedom. I use her 6 principles of mental freedom. I love it. Can't get away from it now, Kim. You can't even throw me out with the baby in the bathwater anymore because you know I'm using mental freedom. So I use the 3 modalities in her mental freedom because I think it's so important that we ask ourselves, what will it take for us to be mentally free? And I know choice theory, reality therapy is taking responsibility for our mental freedom, but I really got to give these guys resources and tools so they can be free.
Yeah, but we can leave anytime. It don't matter. Whenever you're ready. I have it on my phone.
Okay.
That sounds like, Alexa, can we leave now? All right, mental freedom, a mental prison. So I want to look at this. How do we dismantle these limiting beliefs and these negative thought patterns? Right, Ms. Kim? How do we dismantle limiting belief and negative thought patterns when we have been impacted by race or impacted by some trauma? It is the work to, so I got this one guy in particular, every time he says something, he has to do it again by removing his negative thought patterns. And it's consistently working to help these men and women dismantle this. Then the role of mindsets in perpetuating personal society struggles, social struggle. And look at the things that we really struggle with, everybody. It's mindset. So when I'm looking at unchanged mind, I'm constantly asking them about the mindset they do have, because when people come out of the system, whether they're incarcerated, coming from homeless, they both had the same mindset. It's how do we continue to manipulate people to get our needs met? And so we back off long enough to ask them, how do we change the manipulation of your mind so your needs can be met without manipulating systems or people, that you learn how to navigate this well? And that's why the mental freedom becomes so important, that we teach them how to be responsible. But then the piece about key tools about psychological flexibility, use and act. And the reason why I use ACT, because I was trained by Steve Hayes, and ACT is acceptance commitment therapy. And in the center of it is psychological flexibility. It's how do we just observe a thought without acting on the thought? By sitting there long enough to ask them about the thought they're having, that it's just a thought. I don't have to act on it, but I need to observe it. But I also observe, I use Glasser, the total behavior at this point. I ask them what's going on in their body at the same time they're having this thought. So I blend them, I integrated them intentionally so I can get more clarity from where they're going and where they're headed at the particular time. So I love using total behavior. And by working with Dr. Morgan, Janet Morgan, I have expanded the car by putting headlights, tail lights, I put a dashboard, I put gas pedal, brake pedal. I have expanded the car because I got to teach teachers how to navigate this with young men who are in the juvenile justice system by building the car. And these guys understand what it takes to build a car. So I put, like I said, I got the gas light, I got them up there. So I expanded the car with choice theory. All right, passion and purpose. All right. And so I'm just giving y'all the overview of really what's in the book, The Unchained Mind. But how do we reignite the fire within us? How do I talk about intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation, internal control versus external control? It's helping these guys find their purpose. And that's why I was talking about it's with power and purpose. And with mental freedom, we're beginning to find their purpose. So I don't do a blanket statement by purpose. So we break it down in every category. We break it down mental. I have a purpose here in my mind. The Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So we talked about mental. I have a purpose mentally, but I have a purpose with every relationship I'm in, whether it's with the wife or the children, there's a purpose. So we clarify the purpose, like with the relationship. So we broke down different areas that they can find purpose. And one place in the book, I talk about this, is helping men reconcile with their children. And Dr. Glenn Milstein, I did quote him in the book, that giving the women credit for the work they have done while they were absent, respecting all the roles and the responsibility they have taken on while the man was incarcerated. And so now the men are showing signs of appreciation for the work the women have done with their children. And it's lighting a fire within them to be able to say, thank you for the work you've done without being critical, without finding any negativity, by reframing how they approach this. And it's really been really good. I can't tell you enough. I'm having fun doing this. All right. So passion and purpose, there's a fire within. Now, here's the thing about aligning action with values to rediscover purpose. And you see what I said earlier, as a man thinketh. So I use ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. I use choice theory. I use reality therapy to find out what matters most. And by teaching them what matters most, by having them work through their values by what matters most. Now, you got to remember now, in certain cultures, we didn't hear values. It was the unwritten assumption that people knew the values. So we basically back off for a moment and start asking them to look at their values, to find out what matters most, and then discover there's purpose behind it. So I have used Viktor Frankl about purpose and meaning. I have used that to show them that they can find purpose in what they're doing. And they have. I mean, it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing when I'm seeing what these guys are also starting their own companies. I mean, these guys are holding each other accountable to a higher standard. I mean, it's just amazing what I see these guys are doing, because now they start to see they have personal worth. They're seeing their lives just change right before everybody. And it is so good. I celebrate this. That's why I have so many celebrations about what's going on in these guys' life. Accountability in action. this what keeps them moving forward. We have built accountability into every setting that we have. And so they hold each other accountable. They all live in these houses, and they hold each other accountable for how we're moving the needle. They hold them accountable. They take drug tests consistently. They are always tested on drugs. They making sure if they got anything in their system, they hold each other accountable for working on it. Here's our plan, how we're going to get this out, because we don't throw them away. We work with them, because some of the guys have had these struggles in their lives and nobody would give them a second chance or give them a third chance or give them another chance. So we built this accountability. So what it looks like for us, accountability, is being connected in the community. They have to stay connected in the community. They have to do work outside of the community. They have to do work in their community outside. They have to do different things. They have to volunteer to do different things. And so we create this accountability for their growth and healing, because most Black men have never been healed from the psychological impact of slavery or the psychological impact of trauma. They haven't been healed from that. So where's the environment where they can heal? If it's not there, what do you think going to happen to them? So we created that. But understanding total behavior choice and the importance of self-evaluation, we are every week we're evaluating. We'll do it again this Saturday. There's an evaluation process going on. We evaluate every single week. We in my presence, but they're evaluating themselves every single day with each other, but they have to evaluate with me every single week. And we have this in place so they can continue to grow and they can continue to hold each other accountable and they can continue to move forward. And I was so crystal clear, if we don't have accountability, this would not work. It would not work, because these guys are accountable to me. I'm accountable to them. We're making sure that we're moving these needles so that we can have a sense of accountability, because now we're teaching them how to take responsibility for the choices they make. Not assign blame to someone else, not complain, but taking responsibility for the choices they make. I made them crystal clear that I am where I am because of the choices I have made in life. And I told people, I'm not better than you. I decided to choose differently. And choices became so important, because a lot of times people get caught up in, it's the blame. We have this accusatory spirit. We're accusing other people of the choices we have made. And we have worked with these guys and these girls to remove these barriers before them so they can make better choices. They can see that they are making choices each and every day. All right. And the biblical accountability is this piece, because we integrate spirituality to it. God said he's going to hold you accountable. That's it. He's going to hold you accountable. All right. Now, I'm getting close to the end, but I want to talk about this overcoming the stigma, because breaking the silence of mental health in Black communities has been my voice. It's teaching from pastors to community-based organization, faith-based organization, nonprofit organization, from NAMI to Faith in Actions to the different groups I became part of, Ransom Solutions. I mean, just breaking the silence on mental health in Black men. The key thing is giving Black men a safe place to be able to address the mental health challenges they're facing each and every day. If we see that 1 out of every 5 adults that are struggling with some kind of mental health challenge, where's the safe place that they can address these issues? So I became a mental health first aid trainer. So I train people in mental health so they can see, how do we address these issues? But now we're seeing the outcome. We're seeing the outcome that men and women are getting better to address their the mental health challenges they're having, because they have this safe place. They have this non-judgmental space where they can address these issues, whether it has anything to deal with their parents, there's some past issues. And I know a lot of times Glasser doesn't want us to go back, but sometimes we got to go back in our past to see how it has shaped our present moment. And we've done that. So we're addressing culture and systemic barriers to mental health support. We're getting the opportunity to talk to different organizations that just turn a blind eye to Black men. Because in Alabama, if there's any domestic violence issue, 95% of the programs they address women. Well, they incarcerate the men. And in those systems, as Glasser would call it, these are failed systems that we're punishing people for. We have to ask ourselves, what can we do now to overcome these systems? Like, think about it. How many systems are created and the Black man is not at the table? There's no voice there. And we talk about DEI, we could talk about all day long. But the key thing is, where's the voice of someone, not just a voice on the table, but a voice where people are going to listen and say, wait a minute, there's some proof here. We can bring the scientific proof. We can look at the generational curses. We can look at everything, even by scientific thinking, and look at a system and to say, you have not incorporated A, B, and C. And when you do this, what's going to happen? So there has to be a strategy for advocating a normalized mental health conversation. It just can't be around athletes that we're having. It has to be part of the norm. Because I asked the question, how do we build a trauma-informed community where we are training mental health professionals to be able to deal with this and this become the norm? Not keep pushing it aside when it's impacting our youth. Because in Mobile County, we have 1 out of every 15 children that's dealing with some emotional detachments. We have so high of children that are not having quality parental support in their homes. And we're asking ourselves, how do we change this narrative? That's why we have to normalize this. And by using reality therapy, we can help people address these particular issues in our communities. So building resilience is very important. It's developing mental, emotional, spiritual resilience. Now, I laid this out at Glasser. There's 10 different areas that I think is important, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual resilience, especially when we're integrating the faith-based community, we're asking the question, how do we create a mentality or a culture where people learn how to bounce back from the issues and the challenges they had? And we're trying to create this culture because I say anything is creating a culture where people feel like they can bounce back. They can bounce back from the whatever trauma they have encountered in life by learning how to make better choices. So I use it, the WDMP, I called it my personal algorithm. All right. I called it my personal algorithm doing WEP. I know it's the great radio station because I was just on with Bob on the other, having a class with him. It is. So it's my algorithm saying, what do I want? And then key thing what Bob was saying, what are some things I need to avoid? How many times I need to dig deeper and knowing what I'm doing is what I'm doing, getting me what I want. How do I constantly evaluate this? And then what kind of plans do I need to be effective with this? And listen, now WDMP, the radio station, because some radio station starts with K, but down here in Mobile, we have the W's. So I use the WDMP consistently when I'm talking to my guys. What is that you want? So when we're talking about building a culture of humility, and we say, this is what we want, and without having the foundation of love and all this peace here, it won't work. So key tools we use: mindfulness, self-compassion, community support. We practice mindfulness and meditation because the Bible tells us a lot about meditation. We practice this because this is Dent's definition of mindfulness and meditation. You won't find it on Google. I tell people you can't go to Google University, Google Academy to find Dent's definition of this. Mindfulness centers me. Meditation centers God in me. That's my definition of it. Mindfulness is a place where I find my center, but meditation is when God is centered in me. And this leads us to self-compassion and community support, because we know, as Dr. Glenn Milstein will tell you, you need community support. If you don't have community buy-in, sorry, just won't work. So the role of faith, I'm going, faith in spirituality empowers our mental health. We play a major role in this with faith, integrating biblical principle with psychological framework with the total behavior. So understand, when I'm teaching into the church, I have taken the car and put scriptures with it, and I have built this car out, because the Bible says the headlands vision, without vision, people perish. So I have built this piece in total knowledge. The Bible says, without knowledge, my people are destroyed. As Dr. Milstein could tell you, it means to push it away. And so we integrated these biblical principles with psychological framework to create a total behavior. And we talk about, as a man thinketh, my thoughts are what? So, okay, you got the picture. All right. Piece here, fatherhood and legacy. Very important. This piece is how we address absentee fatherhood, rebuilding families, connections, choice theory and value-driven parenting skills to foster engagement and present. And this is one thing about positive father involvement. And I'm seeing fathers. Listen, there's nothing like seeing daddies reconcile with their children. There's nothing like seeing this one guy recently. He had so much anxiety inside of him. We worked with him to make good choices. He reconciled with his children. This is the one, Dr. Milstein, I haven't had the conversation with you. He flew to New Jersey recently and spent Christmas and New Year's for the first time in 20 years being with his children and his grandchildren. And he got a chance to reconcile with his ex-wife. And he said there was nothing like being there, because he was incarcerated for 15 years. He said it's nothing like being with his children. And we working on this so hard because we talk about creating legacy, but creating new memories with their children. And it's breaking the chains. It's giving them mental freedom. All right, defining success. Of course, you know, Glasser talk about there's a success identity and a failure identity, so we're trying to move them beyond what people define as success to their own definition of success. And this is aligning its intrinsic motivation and values. Kim, this is where you come up. We're using mental freedom. And for all of you who have not purchased the book Mental Freedom yet, I do highly recommend you read her book, Mental Freedom, because these guys and these girls, I mean, tell you, it's nothing like hearing people saying, that's it. That's it. That's what I need. I need to be free. And how's this not linked to the Bible when Jesus said, I come to give you freedom, basically? And I say this all the time, Vicky. I say, if leadership is not liberating, is it leadership at all?
Right.
Because it should liberate us from the chains that's been holding us. Told you, Kim, you got me in trouble again. So unchained minds in action. My wife said I had a lot of slides this time. All right. So practical steps is empowering community, inspiring change. And that's what we're doing, using the word focus. And I'm using the word focus on leadership, and I'll just leave it there. You have to ask me later on what focus is all about. Foundation of love, opportunity of choices, opportunity of choices. That's the O is for opportunity of choices. I'll leave it like that. All right. And then we talk about this mental involvement. In Jeremiah 29:11, if you don't know the scripture, I know the plans I have towards you. And that's the key thing, is that God says, I know the plan. All right. All right. Marketplace and identity. And marketplace is integrating these systemic challenges in professional and personal spaces, breaking the chains of racism and economic disparities. And I'll tell you, the psychological flexibility and resilience and choice theory, I've been using this, guys, to help us to create this conversation in these spaces so that we can break these chains. And it's nice to see when liberation is taking place. I'm a James Cone guy, liberation theology. Sorry. It's when liberation takes place, people can thrive. People can thrive. People can thrive. When we can create this liberation, people can thrive. The psychological flexibility is teaching people to be patient at the same time. You got to be patient with other people, but observing self in context and self in the context. It's just, I got so excited about this, everybody. I am. Just let me keep going. All right, here we go. Mental freedom for the future. Kim, you want to? All right, here I am. Sustaining mental health and empowering future generation. Now, this is a piece that Kim, I took out of your playbook. So I created this thing about mental freedom for teens. My God. Okay, we'll talk about it later, Kim. But I saw this as an opportunity to take mental freedom because I got to teach a class in February into the Department of Juvenile Justice. So I'm going to teach them about how do we create mental freedom for teens. And how do we empower these teens for their future generation? Because I think so many times that we have these failed systems, as Glasser would clarify to us, that we need to move them into a successful system, a success identity, so they can feel like I can be successful coming out of this facility and then be able to tell them when they're not ready. And I have shared this with some of the guys because I share with them when I tell them, I said, guys, you're not ready for this next step yet. You need to hang in here right now. And someone will tell me in a minute they think they're ready. And I say, well, share some things that I think is going to happen because you're not ready to move into the next place. Well, isn't that what Glasser was all about? It's being able to show people when they were not ready. And I think if we can introduce mental freedom into these contexts, into where children are, these teens are, who've been incarcerated, that we can help them get liberated so they can cultivate these habits for lifelong growth and freedom. In Romans 8:28, I know that all things work together for good of those who love the Lord and called according to his purpose. So I know there's a purpose for why mental freedom needs to be addressed with teenagers. All right, I'm at the end.
Wow. That was so much information. Yes, let's give him a hand. Absolutely. Really appreciate this. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can call him. You have a question. You want to say something. I do want to say that Glenn added, when you were talking about a voice, he said another word for voice is expertise. I don't know if Glenn wants to talk a little more about that.
Yeah, really straightforward. It's the turning it inside out bit. And Charles and I have been in dialogue for a long time, but you know, we're in a new epoch for right now. We're in a big power shift right now. And there's the assertion that diversity is somehow looking for some smaller a bit of information or lessening our information or going for a smaller place, when in fact it's expanding expertise. And to Charles' point, by not having people at the table, you think you can bring information to a table, but then you're not bringing you don't have the actual voice there, you don't have the expertise there. So you can't pretend you're making new policy, new programming that's useful for mental health if you don't have all the expertise of humanity at your table. That's what I was trying to say. So it's not, you're not doing it because it's aesthetically pleasing to have diversity. You're doing it because you're less of an expert if you don't have more voices. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes.
And I'm happy to expand.
And I want to say my wife is on the line. Thank you, babe, for being here with us.
I see her. It's nice to meet her.
She's the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of South Alabama. So
Wow.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing your husband with us. I appreciate it.
And great PowerPoint, by the way. Excellent PowerPoint skills.
My slash title is graphic designer.
I
Well,
love it.
you've earned it.
Thank you for joining us. I know a lot of you, it's your first time here. We have an open forum after the presentation is done to ask questions, make comments. Please send us your email address in the chat box.
Yes.
We'd like to stay in touch. Who else would like to make a comment? Okay, we've got someone with their hand up. I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your
Ned.
name.
Ned,
Almost? Ned? Okay, go ahead, Ned. You're muted.
that's Dr. Elijah Mickle in Delaware.
He's still muted. I'm sorry, I can't get him unmuted. Anybody else? Go ahead, Wendell.
That's Dr. Elijah Mickle from Delaware. He's been the department chair in 2 departments of social work in South Carolina and Delaware, but that's who he is. He's been connected with for decades. And then look at here. Here's a Canadian visitor, Diane. This is a wonderful welcome. All right, so on TV, remember the California fires. You've probably heard that there are quite a few prisoners that are working with firefighters, and there's a program, and they select them and vet them, and they're working on the wildfires, not in urban cities. Okay, and one of them was interviewed yesterday and talked about how his life turned around and he learned to be a part of a team and self things with others and getting skills and then getting a job in firefighting afterwards, and the things that Dr. Dent's talking about. And also, Dr. Dent, I'd like you to hear from Dr. Les and Dr. Roxanne Trichet in California, because everything you're doing, they're doing there, and it's just a wonderful kind of a blend. The Venn diagram is 100% almost too. So, Les, if either you or Roxanne would jump in. And also, I'm making a bid for anybody who's not connected with the Glasser Institute, or put your, like Mika's done. Mika is put an email address so we can give you information about other things in the future.
So Wendell, I think Kim has a her hand up, and then I saw Micah. Possibly you raised your hand. So go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I want to start, if I could, with celebration, because you asked us about celebration, and that's my favorite thing. So I have actually 3. I want to celebrate accountable self-evaluation. I really liked that piece. The men coming out of an incarceration experience believing they have worth, which I think that's a tough thing to create, and I'm really pleased to hear that. And building resistance also. So those are my 3 celebrations. And my question is, because I know you're a pastor and it's biblical teachings that you ground this in, I wonder if you work with Muslim people also, and if the Quran would come into this in any way. Just curious about that.
Yes, but I haven't had the opportunity to do it because the last group of Muslims I worked with was in Augusta, Georgia, and they were so open to so many other things. And I have yet to have that population here in Mobile. At least I haven't found them here, but I know they're here, but not like they were in Augusta. In Augusta, Georgia, I was able to work with them, and we have open dialogues about the Quran, and we can talk about different things. And we talk most of the time we talked about what we had was similar than when we had was different. And because we all have these mental health challenges that we're having, and especially sometimes in different religion, because we suffer a lot from spiritual injuries as well, and it's sometimes difficult for people to say, I haven't encountered some kind of spiritual injury in the church. So I haven't, not here, Kim, but I have when I was in Georgia. but I haven't had the chance here.
Great, thank you.
Neb, do you want to try? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, my computer froze on me, but thank you for waiting. I thought it was an excellent presentation. I've had an opportunity to read your book only once though, but so, and I find it quite interesting. My question has to do with the construct or concept or idea of spirituality as a basic need. My only work is having to do with African-centered reality therapy, which goes back many, many thousands of years to not only Kemet, but the continent itself. And I've always included spirituality as a basic need. Now, that is an adjustment to Glass's work, which is fine. I mean, some of it I wrote while he was still around, and he never questioned me about it. So I would like to know, having read your text, where spirituality comes to the fore over and over again, how do you not, or do you see spirituality as basic to the needs, especially when you're working with Black men?
Well, I'll tell you this. One of the exciting pieces about this, dealing with spirituality, I allow them to define what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't define it for them. And I found out by me allow them to define what is spirituality, what's religion, what is faith. I let them define it. I have to ask them that question, like, how does that meet a basic need in their lives? And they can show me. And then my responsibility would be, because we all have these basic needs for survival. We all know we need food, shelter, clothing, we need safety, we need this. But for them, in implementing in certain environments, in certain settings, it's very important for them to find out, how do I define my particular spiritual need in this particular context? So it's not driven by me, because when someone asked me this question before, they had a person in the clinic dealing with something, they asked me, I say, I don't drive it. I don't drive a person's spirituality. I don't drive their religion. I don't drive it at all. I'll sit in the passenger seat, not the back seat with the back seat driver. I just sit in the passenger seat and say, okay, where are we going with this? How's this working for you? And I ask the right questions. And at the same time, they can do their own evaluation of it, because that's not my responsibility. That's theirs.
But just a quick follow-up, and I won't ask another question. In your text, you use biblical quotations, and is that spirituality or is that religion? And I wasn't really asking you, how do you define it? I was asking you if you saw it as a basic need. But thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A basic need, absolutely.
I think we have another hand up. Is it Rasha? Go ahead and unmute.
Yes. Hello. Actually, thank you so much for the presentation. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. I actually was on my way driving. That's why I heard almost some of the presentation, not all of it, but I could figure out the thing that we're talking about in meditation. And when you spoke about the Muslim part as the Quran verses, actually it aroused my attention that the Quran, there's a lot of things that are common with the reality therapy and the choice theory. I can actually send you a lot of verses within the Quran.
Uh-oh, did she get frozen?
Yep, she did.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Working with several people, and in order to show them about the how choice theory can make this kind of a change, and how if we go for the WDEP in a way or another for the students, they can make those changes, or they can make those choices differently. So I also need some research part and backup. That's why I keep on finding some articles about the choice theory, although I read almost all the books of William Glasser and Webolding, and in English for sure. And we're trying to, as much as we can, to apply them. I'm not a trainer in reality therapy. I'm a social worker, but I actually finished level 5. And Mr. Wendell was going. I already met him, and he knows about my certification part. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very helpful. And if you need any help, or if there's anything that we can do together, I'm ready for that. Thank you so much.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling, and now I'm in Qatar because I left Lebanon since there's war in Lebanon. Already it stopped the war, but still we lost our house. We lost lots of issues. That's why we actually left Lebanon for a while, so that I can work, and then I go back to Lebanon later on. But during the war, we were working in different schools with even with the refugees, even with refugees from Syria, even from different places with the Lebanese people, since they actually were in a crisis part.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Brian
Thank you.
Patterson, our Executive Director of Glasser Institute for Choice Theory in the U.S., has got his hand up. Thank you for joining us today. Brian, go right ahead.
Good morning. Vicki, thanks so much for hosting this and encouraging this. I appreciate it. And Charles has some very special things I think he shared, like what the celebration part, like Kim reminded us of our assignment. But the success identification for people who've been incarcerated, if they're, second chance kind of programs. A friend of mine that you may know, Paul Young, who's the author of The Shack, has a ministry that he does with death row inmates. And he said, in talking with them and getting to know their hearts even, he said they say that it's a terrible thing to be defined by the worst day of your life. And I think that that's what Charles is addressing, how we can improve people's perspective that they can be and they are successful, and it may be just one small step at a time, but I really appreciate what Charles has done with that. So Charles, thank you for that.
Awesome.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Micah, I think you might have had your hand up a while ago. I'm not sure if you still want to say anything.
I just wanted to appreciate the presentation. I had some very good insights from his statements on mindfulness and meditation. I enjoyed his insights, and I think I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Micah.
Anybody else have anything they want to share, talk about? We have about 7 more minutes to go.
Hey, I think Diane from Canada may have had her hand up.
Oh, you're muted, Diane. You're still muted.
Vicki, send her the request to unmute. I think that makes it easier.
I think she got it. Well, I was hoping she had it. Marcus, while
Let's
we're
see,
waiting.
am I unmuted now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're on now. Go ahead,
So-
ma'am.
I just say I'm just a listener here, and I appreciate being included.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you joined us from.
And one of my jobs when I lived in California, and I went with Glasser to the Ventura School in the very beginning when he was just writing the book Reality Therapy. So I'm probably the oldest one in the group here. And then I worked at the right where the fires are now in the Encinal prison camp for young men, 18 years and of age. And so I understand it's a real challenge to make the shift that we're wanting. So,
Thank you.
I used reality therapy in a lot of questions, like the "could you have done worse" question is a really important one. And the answer you're looking for, of course, is not meet my need, you see. So they have to know the needs to answer that. But it's a very healing process in the correctional setting. Could you have done worse? I could have not tried to solve the situation, you see, or could not have come in the room. I wanted to walk right by the room and not even talk to you. There's a lot of could you have done worse, and that the minute the person sees that, then you can easily say, move from there. Can you do better? Do you want to do better? Do you want my help, or do you want the group's help?
Yeah, thank you. Marcus,
You're welcome.
He's our vice president of the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, our board. Welcome. I saw your hand up a few minutes ago. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I don't think I have Oh, maybe I do. I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for Dr. Dent sharing this information. It was, excellent information, and not only food for thought, but you're actually out there doing the work and changing lives, and I think that's to be commended. I had one question I thought about earlier, as when you're articulating that we're where we are based on the choices we made in the past. Do you quantify that in any way for people by saying, you understand that everybody's circumstance is different, so your starting line might be different, or your people say life isn't fair. Your choices still impact where you end up, but somebody's choices still, they might have different choices than you had, and even though a person might pick the wrong choices, someone picking the right choices gets them to a certain point, and a different person picking those same right choices gets them to another point. Is there any acknowledgement of life isn't fair, but your choices impact your life, or is that something that doesn't come up because the way you articulate choice is the most important thing?
Well, Marcus, there's no doubts, and I don't know if people really know how much I struggle with that, because, like I mentioned when I was with you guys in Chicago, how did Jim Crow invaded my quality world, and then my choices was basically I didn't get an opportunity to say anything, or even children dealing with injustice, not knowing how to articulate abuse or anything of this nature. So how do I choose when the choices are made for me? Oh, how do I choose when I don't know what choice to make? It's I mean, because for example, when I went through all the things dealing with race and discrimination, things of this nature, like when I was in the military, and I made the choice, I made the right choice to do the right thing. Well, someone didn't make the choice to give me the reward for the right thing I was doing. So, it becomes really difficult to say, yeah, I made the right choice. Yes, I did everything in this nature. But when you're embedded into a system that's supposed to reward your successes, not punish your successes, what choice do I make? You get punished for doing the right thing, or you get punished for doing the wrong thing. Or so, I mean, that's something I think I would continue to address, even dealing with racism, dealing with the black man is not at the table. We're making these decisions for other people. The female is not at the table. The woman is not at the table. The black female, they're not at the table, but we're designing programs to think that we can help them. Who made that choice for us? Who's making the choice for us? Now, I understand a lot, and that's why the pieces that you're talking about, referring to, like, I tell people, everybody, I'm where I am because of the choices I made. But you think about what choices were made for me, which I had to just say, okay, um, you know, so I would love to hear someone else, their observation on this, their perspective, because a lot of times we say he didn't have a choice. Like, I have a choice to grow up in the bottom in Augusta, Georgia? Did I have a choice to grow up on the other side of the track? So they designed it that was the only place they're going to make accessible to black people to purchase houses. So did you put me in a school that you knew was failing because you made a choice for me and all these other things that's happening? And then you kept me in a failing school, and you didn't give me another choice to get outside of that arena, and you didn't expose me to any other schools that were happening. Because when I did the research on private schools, when they start doing integration in school, more private schools they gave birth to private institutions because they made a choice not to integrate. Did I have that choice? Did I have that option? So I have so many questions, man, when it comes to this.
I love your train of thought. I would like to recognize my friend, Jim Roy. He's sitting in here. This is his book about William Glasser, Champion of Choice. Thank you, Jim, for joining us and being a sponsor to our international conference last year. We really appreciate all the donations you gave and all the work you did spending with Glasser. So if anybody wants that book, let me know. I've got a few left, and I think we can still order them. I think on Amazon, is that correct? Okay. And then I saw Steve Tracy's hand up. Steve Tracy is the president of our Glasser Institute for Choice Theory in the U.S., and I welcome him and thank you, all of you that attended, Steve and Marcus and Brian. And Rena, she's our secretary of the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, so appreciate you being here too. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Vicki. And Charles, thank you for a very impassioned and focused presentation. You've given us a lot to think about. Whenever I hear somebody say, I didn't have a choice, I'm reminded of a time years ago when I was trying to explain these choice theory ideas to young men in juvenile detention here in Connecticut. And that's what they said to me. You know, they said, we don't have the choices that you probably had, Dr. Tracy, because I live in such and such of a neighborhood in Bridgeport or whatever. I don't have any choices. And the examples that I love to give them at that point, one you've already mentioned, which is Viktor Frankl and his book, Man's Search for Meaning. You know, read about this man and talk about who has choices. And the other example I think is very telling is Stephen Hawking. Here's a man who literally couldn't move anything but his eyes in the latter part of his life, and yet made the choice to become one of the most renowned physicists and writers of the 20th century. So I think we need to be prepared to explain to people, or even to ourselves, whenever we hear, I had no choice, that there are examples out there of courageous people who have found choices in the midst of horrible situations. And thank you again for sharing your wisdom with us today, Charles.
Yes,
You're welcome. Kim had her hand up, Vicki.
Oh, I missed it. Kim, go right ahead. I'll have to unmute. Did she say no? Oh, she's muted. I'm sorry. Les and Roxanne, I don't know if you want to share. They do amazing work in California.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kim.
No, I just wanted to say that if you just think socioeconomics, not even bringing any intersectionality into that, you've got people with privilege certainly have more choices than people who are born with less. And the choices that, you know, you look at sometimes is, do I want to work 3 jobs like my single mother and come home exhausted and have nothing left to give the family? Or do I want to maybe do something that might be illegal, but it will provide for the people that I love? Sometimes that's a choice. And I think the important thing for us is not to judge those choices, but to maybe help people see that there are choices that they may not be able to see given their situation. And some choices, Charles, like you said, are not available or are made for you. So those go into the realm of, well, I didn't have any choice in this. I can't control those things, but I can control these things. And I think that's where the focus needs to be, on what we have control over, even if it's just, as Viktor Frankl wrote about, how we think about things. That may be the only way we have any power and control. So that's the only piece that I wanted to add. Thank you.
And I'll say this, Vicky, before less ago. But think about it. Viktor Frankl was what? A psychologist, psychiatrist? Come on. I mean, come on now. So his mindset is so different than a 14-year-old who may have not been exposed to different choices or resources that's available. So, you know, it's like you try if we create these systems that we throw certain people in and going like, man, I just trying to get a piece of bread on the table. I'm just trying to keep the lights on for us. And because what choices out there that's available for me, and when you go like create this aha moment for me, like aha, so there's other options that's out there for me as well, that I never been exposed to these resources, and I'm not privileged. I don't understand them. I'm 14, I'm 12, I'm 12. I don't understand this. And my parents working 3 or 4 jobs, my mom's out there working, and she's rarely home with us. What choice did she make? Oh, no one told her you don't have to work 3 or 4 jobs. You could find one job. Oh, you can go back to school. Can I afford to go back to school? Do I have these choices? And I think when coming to the table with these Black men and men of color, allowing them to tell me what they see and their perspective of it, and giving them saying, I hear what you're saying. but have you considered, have you thought about? No, I have not. So, and by creating these other options for them, and they and exposing to different resources and expose them around different people, it has given them the courage to say, I can make a better choice. I can choose differently. Because some people don't have the courage to make those choices, to have to create the courage to give them the confidence that they can choose differently. And I see the work that's being done with them. It's not just this piece of like, I gotta help them see there's different options. They can unchain their mind. They can navigate their mental health and their mental well-being. And here's the tools that you need. Because the Bible teaches us in everything we talk about, not only the spiritual context of it, but teaching them there are tools in which you need. Like everybody say, if you got a hammer, you think everything is a nail. No, but the hammer can be used for different things. You can pull the nail out. So I really appreciate everybody chiming into this. And I'll tell you how's it working? It works by giving them the space to be able to talk about the things that they're dealing with, non-judgmental, and having a sense of justice in the room.
I know we're after 1 and we try to always end at 1. And obviously this conversation needs to continue. For those of you that have to leave, because you only had an hour, thank you for joining us. Please come back. Our next one is January, I believe, 25th, 2025. And Nancy Herrick will be with us to talk about Take Charge of Your Life. So please join us there. We'll continue to talk for probably another 10 minutes, if that's okay with you, Dr. Dent, or do you need to go?
That's okay with me.
Okay, for those of you that can stay, thank you. For those that you have to go, really appreciate your attendance today. Roxanne and Les, did you have something you wanted to add or ask?
Yes, thank you, Vicki. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Dent for the information. I did buy your book. I did read it. I was very much moved by it. But I'm really impressed today at the turnout and a number of people that are interested in hearing this combination of choice theory and spirituality. Roxanne and I have been working in this area for a very long time in both male and female prisons. We've taken it to a chaplaincy program and almost every area you can possibly imagine. But there's been a tremendous amount of pushback. On one side says, why would you dare include psychology with the word of God? And the other side say, why would you do the opposite? So I'm pleased to see the people here today and also the writing by Dr. Dent on this. Having worked in a prison for a very long time, the one thing I would say, although the focus today is talking about Black men and men of color, there's a bigger problem than this. This is a big problem. This is something to work about. In fact, we just finished writing my life story called The Evolution of Internal Control Living, The Life of Les Trichet. And a lot of things we're talking about, I describe in my book, exactly what you're talking about, what it's like. But the big problem is the system has been designed to treat the water. And by that, I simply mean to treat those that are incarcerated as a commodity, as an economic machine that they use. So we have to somehow find a way to treat the water as well as the fish. That is the system in itself, because the system is designed to survive. It's designed to create revenue, tremendous amount of revenue. And really, as we begin to tie it to Black males, it's designed to keep them there. We represent well over 40% in most of the prison. We got 35 of them here in California, and a large percentage of Hispanic people. There's a lot of work to be done in this area, and I think we cannot begin to exclude the spirituality piece of it. I love the way that Dr. Dent said that he allowed the individual to define whether or not spirituality is a part of the basic need. We tend to believe that it is, but again, we allow individuals to decide that for themselves as a whole. So I look forward to hearing more about this, and especially Dr. Dent, I'd like to be able to at least share with you some of the things we are doing. I think we're really doing a lot of the same thing, but it takes a lot more than just you and I and the people online here. Somehow we have to educate the world about what's going on. So your book, in my opinion, is a beginning to do that. I also want to thank Kim for the amount of work that she's done and how you're able to tap into some of her teaching, as well as Bob Wobblebean and some of the other people that are online that's been around for a while in this choice theory world as a whole. So I'm thankful, and I'm really thankful to Glasser and Carlene. You know, in 2007, they gave me a scholarship to learn choice theory and reality therapy, and it just blew up. It just did. We've trained thousands and thousands of individuals. We've developed programs that end up being online college and seminary, and you know, we've written a lot of books. It just a real powerful modality to use. We know that it works in every environment. So right now, our target is get into the chaplains, because the chaplains are the one that should be able to teach and address those people who are not Christian, who are not religious, or whatever it may be. And it's so important because they're humans and they all have the same needs, whether or not the 5 basic needs plus spirituality or whatever way you want to look at it. They have needs, and many people don't know how to address those needs. And we, a very, very small group, have truly been trained to do that. So we have to find a way to get the word out. So thank you very much, Vicki. Thank you very much, Dr. Dent, and everyone else. So thank you. That's up, Roxanne.
No, I agree. No, I agree. And I love the part, because Les and I talk about that all the time, about spirituality being part of the basic needs. And so when you said that, you know, it was like, wow, you know, yes, absolutely. So I haven't had the opportunity yet to read the book, but Les and I really were in discussion about it in the last couple of days.
It's right here, Roxanne. Read it.
He had it. By the way, he had it. So I let him read it, and then I go back and read the highlights that he had. So that's my quick note version, okay? So, but anyway, so
partnership, that's good.
So it was an absolute pleasure to meet you and to see the great turnout here for what it is, you know, that God has working in this, you know, in this particular situation. So looking forward to meeting you and talking to you more on that. So thank you for your time, and your wife.
So lesson, Roxanne, one of the things I discovered, and people don't see that the root word of ology comes from the Greek word logos, and they don't want to say it's a study of, and we don't want to bring it back to it. So dealing with spiritual psychology and spiritual theology, that people sometimes have divorced that, and they don't realize we might be in the predicament we're in today because we have divorced ourselves from spirituality, and we have divorced ourselves thinking that we can navigate this life or this mental health challenges that we have without it. And these guys, I'm telling you, they really, I mean, hearing them talk about repentance and hearing them talk about changing their mind, and I don't have to lead it. I can just listen long enough to hear how they're doing it. And so, you know, because I think when you force it on people, they regurgitate it too quickly. You got to get them to the place they can chew on it. Because I said the mother of all learning, we say, is repetition. I said the father of all learning is taking action, but the child of all learning is studying. Who has taught them how to study even their own behavior?
That's right.
And so we get a chance to do more of that. So I really appreciate you guys, you know, buying the book, purchasing it. I really love it, because there's some other things I'm working on now. The piece that I'm really writing, my history about racism and what I saw from it from a child, from the time of standing at the water fountain, messing with the color in the white water.
You need to read my book. That's all.
I wrote your name down, so I'm gonna go ahead and get it.
Well, Dr. Dent, we can't thank you enough. I knew this was going to be amazing, and I'd like to be able to have you come back. We want to thank him and everyone that joined. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.
Thank you, Vic.